There are many reasons why someone would want to quit their job. Whether it's a poor work environment, conflict with your pay, or you just want to move on to something new, people come and go from job positions all the time. Even some celebrities have quit their jobs for various reasons, so let's talk about that today as we count down the top 10 celebrities who quit Hollywood Part 2. At number 10, Phoebe Cates. Actress Phoebe Cates was a rising star back in the 80s. She was a celebrity crush for many people during that decade, but eventually Phoebe had to move on from the spotlight and ended up quitting Hollywood. After starring in a number of famous movies such as Fast Times at Ridgemont High and the Gremlins films, the actress was riding a pretty big wave of success, but by 1989 she decided to make a life-changing decision to leave the film industry behind and move on from Hollywood. As for why she made that decision, well, she decided to settle down. Phoebe got married in 1989 to actor Kevin Kline, and together the couple had 2 kids, Greta and Owen. The actress later told Playboy magazine that she and her husband originally came up with a plan where they, quote, agreed to alternate so they were never working at the same time, but that isn't what ended up happening because according to Phoebe, quote, whenever it's her slot to work, Phoebe has chosen to stay with the children. Phoebe has officially been out of work since 1994, as her last starring role was in Princess Caribou. She now owns and operates her own boutique in New York. At number 9, Michael Schoeffling. Another 80s star who eventually quit Hollywood is actor Michael Schoeffling. Michael rose to fame in 1984 when he got his breakout role as Jake Ryan in the film 16 Candles opposite Molly Ringwald. From there, his career was elevated and he went on to star in 9 more films like Vision Quest and Mermaids with Winona Ryder. He didn't stay in the spotlight for much longer after that, however. Though he continued acting into the early 90s, starring in films like Wild Hearts Can't Be Broken, he made the decision to leave the fame behind and quit Hollywood. Michael decided that that life just wasn't for him anymore and he wanted to live a simpler life with his family, and so he moved his young family back to his native home of Pennsylvania and went on to open a woodworking shop. Since then, he's kept a pretty low profile, but his daughter ended up following in the footsteps of his fame, becoming a successful model. Now before I carry on with the list, I would like to ask you guys to consider leaving a like on this video if you're enjoying it so far, because your support really does mean a lot to us and it really helps the channel out. At number 8, Dolores Hart. This actress was said to become the next Grace Kelly, but much like Grace, Dolores Hart ended up quitting Hollywood, but for a very different reason. Dolores Hart rose to fame when she starred alongside Elvis Presley, playing his love interest in the 1957 film Loving You. From there, she was catapulted to fame and went on to star in a number of other films like Where the Boys Are, Come Fly With Me, and King Creole. But in 1964, Dolores shocked the world of Hollywood when she announced that she would not only be leaving the film industry, but that she was also leaving acting to become a nun. At just 24 years old, she left her budding Hollywood career behind and moved into the Abbey of Regina Lotus Monastery in Connecticut, where she still lives to this day. At number 7, Al Franken. Al Franken has accomplished a lot in his life and he's held a lot of jobs over the years, but he actually got his start in Hollywood. Al rose to fame in the 70s and 80s when he was a staff writer for Saturday Night Live, and he worked there for over 3 decades, but he really reached the pinnacle of his success when he became an author in the 90s when he released the, quote, ultimate meditation book called I'm Good Enough, I'm Smart Enough, and Doggone It, People Like Me. But after the success of his book, he decided to leave Hollywood behind and begin a new career path. In the 2000s, Al started his career as a political radio host, and then later he upped the ante and ran for senator of Minnesota, a position he later won and held from 2009 to 2018 when he made the controversial decision of resigning from office. At number 6, Karyn Parsons. You may know Karyn Parsons from her iconic role as Hilary Banks from The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and her role in Major Payne in 1995, but following her success in the 90s, Karyn started to fade out of Hollywood, later quitting the industry altogether. After going on to have a couple more starring roles into the early 2000s, Karyn got married, had a kid, and decided to leave the film industry to focus on her writing. After changing her career path, the actress turned writer opened a non-profit organization called Sweet Blackberry, whose mission is to, quote, bring little-known stories of African American achievement to children everywhere. As part of her goal to share stories with and educate people on many of the injustices Black people face, Karyn wrote a children's book called How High the Moon, where she tells the story about a mother and daughter during their time in Boston during the Jim Crow era and the injustices that the young protagonist experiences. She's using her platform to elevate voices, showing that she doesn't need the boost from Hollywood to have her voice heard and impact the lives of others. At number 5, Gene Hackman. This next celebrity is one who had such a long career in Hollywood that his retirement from the industry was certainly well deserved. Actor Gene Hackman is an Academy Award-winning actor known best for his films such as Bonnie and Clyde, The French Connection, and Unforgiven. As I mentioned earlier, Gene had a long career in Hollywood, having acted in over 70 films. That's right, 70. Though he was so successful in the film industry, he felt as though his time on the big screen had come to an end, and so he announced his retirement from acting back in 2004. Gene said that he just couldn't take the stress of Hollywood anymore, and so he decided to call it quits and went on to pursue other creative avenues. Moving on from Hollywood, Gene reinvented himself as an author, going on to write or co-write 5 books. His most recent book, a novel called Pursuit, which was released in 2013, is a thriller that follows a police officer and one of the most difficult pursuits that they've ever encountered in their life. Sounds like a pretty good book, and I would expect a very creative story coming from someone who's played so many characters and has read so many scripts over the years. At number 4, Bridget Fonda. Actress Bridget Fonda, the niece of actress Jane Fonda, was one of the most famous Hollywood stars in the 80s and 90s. Her name was everywhere and she was very successful during this time. She found most of her success after starring in films like Single White Female and Lake Placid, but even after all that success and fame, Bridget suddenly quit Hollywood in 2003. Before her retirement from the industry, she starred in a Hallmark miniseries called Snow Queen, but shortly after filming this project, Bridget got into a pretty serious car accident in 2002. After the incident, she found herself spending more and more time with her then boyfriend, Danny Elfman, and soon love took over and they announced their engagement in early 2003. After getting married in that same year, no one really heard from Bridget, and most people believe that she left Hollywood just to live a simpler life without the pressures of fame and to settle down and start a family of her own. Bridget and Danny live a pretty quiet life away from the spotlight, and they haven't really done any interviews or interacted with fans on social media, so they really don't have much to do with Hollywood anymore. At number 3, Greta Garbo. Hollywood and the film industry has been around for quite some time now, and I honestly think that the early years of Hollywood were the most interesting. People really took their jobs seriously, and boy oh boy were there a lot of scandals back then. During this time, stars fought so hard for their fame, so for someone to quit their job in the film industry, that was kind of wild since it was a job that everyone wanted. Take actress Greta Garbo for example. Greta started as a Swedish silent film star and eventually made her way to Hollywood in the mid-1920s. Here she gained a lot of fame, especially thanks to the film Flesh and the Devil, which made her a worldwide sensation. Later on in her career, she was even nominated for 3 Academy Awards, so she was really getting good in Hollywood. But suddenly, this all changed when Greta started getting bad reviews after starring in the 1941 film Two-Faced Women. Because of all this negative attention she was receiving, she basically just ran away from Hollywood and never made a film again. Instead, she focused on collecting art for the rest of her days. At number 2, Carrie Henn. Starting a career in Hollywood at a young age doesn't seem like it would be very easy. For a lot of former child stars, they say that they regret getting into the industry when they were so young because it made growing up very difficult for them. Though some stick around in the industry for the long haul, others quit pretty early on, and this is pretty much what happened to actress Carrie Henn. Carrie was cast as Newt in the movie Aliens, but after filming it, she decided that she just couldn't handle Hollywood anymore. Years after the hit film came out, Carrie did an interview to catch fans up to speed on what she's been doing and why they left Hollywood, where she said that she just didn't want to be away from her family. Carrie eventually got into the field of education, and she occasionally signs copies of the movie for her students, which is actually pretty cool. And finally, at number 1, Sean Connery. The late Sean Connery was a cinematic icon and an incredibly talented actor. He was actually one of my dad's favorite actors, so shout out to him. Sean had an incredible career, but he eventually got fed up with the industry and retired. Later in his career, Sean started to feel as though the quality of cinema had started to decline, and it actually made him so upset that he quit the industry because of it. He once commented on the quality of filmmakers, calling them, quote, a bunch of effing fetuses in 3-piece suits. In an interview, he spoke more about why he left the industry, saying, quote, what I said was I was fed up with dealing with effing idiots. For years there had been a widening gap between people who can make films and people who can't. Too many people are afraid to say, I don't know, they get in and get out quick, and too many don't know what they're doing. He was very passionate about cinema, but he brought so much refinement to it, so we will certainly miss that now that he's no longer with us. Now before I wrap up the video, I want you guys to tell me what your dream job would be. Is it something that you're currently working towards? Are you already living that dream? Let me know about your career goals down in the comments. Anyways, that's it for me. I've been your host, Room, and until next time, stay safe, make good choices, and stay groovy, friends. Bye!